Tonight, calls from Sudan for the international community to act now to address the disaster unfolding in Darfur. The country's UK ambassador tells Sky News the crisis in Fashir is getting worse as thousands are targeted in killing fields around the city. The ambassador claims the paramilitary rapid support forces who seized the city should be treated as terrorists, and accuses the RSF's alleged main backer, the United Arab Emirates, of enabling genocide, claims denied by the UAE. Coming up, we'll speak live to the president of the International Rescue Committee, David Miliband. Also ahead, a loss to the nation. George W. Bush leads tributes to his former vice president, Dick Cheney, who's died aged 84. The 34-year-old political outsider poised to lead New York as the new Trump era faces an early test with elections across the US. In Ukraine, we meet the underground drone squad with the lives of thousands of civilians in their hands. Plus, we hear from a former US colonel who says evidence that an Israeli soldier intentionally killed an American journalist was shrugged off by the Biden administration. Good evening and welcome to the programme. Tonight, the Sudanese government calls on the international community to act now to help those fleeing paramilitary forces in Darfur. The country's ambassador to the UK tells Sky News the situation around the city of Fashir is getting worse and that the rapid support forces should be treated like a terrorist organisation. Once home to more than 1 million people, the RSF laid siege to Fashir for 18 months and finally took control of the city 10 days ago after the Sudanese army fled. Some 70,000 people have escaped, but of those who fled, only 10,000 are accounted for. And Sky News has seen evidence that thousands of those who left have been targeted by the RSF in killing fields surrounding the city. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports.
It is the conflict the world said could never be allowed to repeat itself. But 20 years on in Darfur, that is exactly what is happening. And in London today, a stark warning from Sudan's ambassador. Another genocide is underway and a plea for the world to intervene.
This ground invasion of Fashir is just the last stage of an elaborate and well-calculated and comprehensive genocidal design.
Horrific images and reports are emerging following the fall of the city of Fashir to RSF paramilitary forces. As many as 6,000 people are thought to have died in 4 days. Here a man pleads for his life before being shot dead in cold blood. Tens of thousands have been forced to flee. Today, more allegations that the United Arab Emirates is supporting the RSF and calls for Britain to rein in its Gulf ally.
The need for intervention to, putting pressure on the enabler of this ongoing genocide and to take a firm, united position against that.
Who is the enabler?
It is no secret that the Janjaweed, the source of their armament and the mercenaries and the logistical support and everything is coming through the UAE.
The United Arab Emirates?
Yes.
The UAE says it doesn't support any of the factions in Sudan's civil war, but mounting evidence suggests otherwise. The British government says what's happening in Darfur is truly horrifying and it's committing £5 million more to avert what it says is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the 21st century. Its critics and the Sudanese government say without more intervention from the UK and other countries, that crisis will only become even worse. For members of Britain's Sudanese community like Dr. Hashim Mukhtar, who has family in Fashir, enough is enough.
We've got our land and we want to protect it. Leave us alone. Stop supporting the Janjaweed, the RSF, and please, British government, put your pressure, put your leverage on the United Arab Emirates to get off our backs because we can't have it anymore.
For 18 months, the people of Fashir were besieged and starved, and the world did not intervene. With their city now fallen, there is still no sign of that changing. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
And we've had a response to those claims from the UAE with an official saying, we categorically reject any claims of providing any form of support to either warring party since the onset of the civil war and condemn atrocities committed by both Port Sudan Authority and RSF. The latest UN panel of experts report makes clear that there is no substantiated evidence that the UAE has provided any support to RSF or has any involvement in the conflict. So that's a response this evening to our report from UAE officials. Let's speak now to David Miliband, President and Chief Executive of the International Rescue Committee and a former British Foreign Secretary. Mr. Miliband, it's always good to speak to you. We'll get to the regional and global rivalries that we're seeing play out at the moment across Sudan. But I mean, the horrors of this conflict and the horrors that people have had to endure, the fact that tens of thousands of people remain unaccounted for, is simply shocking. And the fact that there is, frankly, silence from the international community.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks to your brave correspondents who've been doing work in the west of Sudan. I really recommend that your viewers go to the Sky News website. I did so just before the program and read on-the-ground testimony that tallies exactly with what our own staff are reporting, which is that there are terrified people who are making it out alive from Al Fashir, and the stories that they're bringing are of absolute horror inside Al Fashir. You said rightly, Yalda, that these are shocking stories, but I'm afraid it's not surprising because for 18 months, organizations like mine have been warning about the dangers in Al Fashir. We've estimated that there's about 200 to 250,000 people inside this city, which we obviously can't confirm at the moment. And what we do know is that those who've made it out are a small minority, and they're bringing tales of absolute horror with them. After a siege of 18 months that left people starving, we've now got what seems to be very clear evidence, testimony of killing on a large scale. It's an absolute horror show, and you're right to classify the reaction as just muted or even silent. The United Nations Security Council put out a press statement, but this is the largest humanitarian disaster the world has ever seen. 30 million people in humanitarian need. And so the warnings need to be heeded.
And we talk about, these people in numbers, but frankly, the stories that we're also documenting here, as you say, our correspondents are doing it, your teams are doing it on the ground, of children showing up by themselves without their parents. It's unclear where their families have disappeared to, but these children are emerging, starving, injured, traumatized, having fled these scenes of horror.
Yeah, I think it's really important for your viewers to get a sense of the scale of this. Sudan is a country of 45 to 50 million people. 30 million, 2/3 of them, depend on humanitarian help to survive. Why is that the case? Because this brutal civil war has been running since April 2023. You may remember, you will certainly remember, and some of your viewers may remember, that in 2019, the dictatorship of Omar Bashir, which had lasted 30 years, was overthrown. There was a civilian government. The first problem is there wasn't proper support for that civilian government. In 2021, there was a military coup. In 2023, the two sides of that military coup fell out with each other or resumed hostilities with each other, and you've ended up with this appalling situation. I was in eastern Sudan just last month, actually September, so a month and a bit ago. And I saw for myself the evidence of the fighting. It's relatively, the fighting is no longer taking place in the east of the country. But the stories from our own staff, 400 staff we have in Sudan working for the International Rescue Committee, 90% of them have lost everything themselves. They're internally displaced people. And what they spoke of was of a horrific civil war with external backing. And there are 13 different countries, we think, more than a dozen countries backing different sides of this conflict, the two main sides, but there are also other players. And so this is a classic case of the modern form of warfare, which is civil wars that are magnified by external engagement on all sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it played out in other places, places like Syria, for example. But Mr. Miliband, you documented the situation in the country from around 2019 onwards, and the fact that we've seen this collapse take place. And then, of course, as the civil war broke out in 2023, and we saw tens of thousands of foreign citizens being evacuated, and we knew very quickly that the conflict in Sudan would be forgotten. But we are soon coming up to 20 years since people were talking about Darfur the last time round, because even then it was classified as one of the world's biggest humanitarian crises. And yet again, we are seeing the same sort of thing play out today.
Well, that's a really important point that you're making. The difference between 20 years ago and today is that 20 years ago, there was a massive operation to mobilize public opinion in the West, but also in Africa, to try and deliver what became Operation Lifeline Sudan. And it was a lifeline for people who were suffering the most brutal hostility from the so-called Janjaweed, who you've mentioned in your report. And so this just shows that when humanitarian crises are not properly addressed, when political systems don't share power, when arms flows are as widespread as they are at the moment, you end up with the tinderbox that then explodes in this most brutal fashion. And I do want to emphasize there are some very urgent, immediate steps. We're not just calling for new words. We're not just bemoaning the fact that the world isn't as it was before. It's absolutely critical. Number one, there must be safe passage for people to get out of El Fasher and for humanitarian aid workers to get in. Critically, secondly, we need a full-scale humanitarian response. Yalda, it's 75% underfunded, the humanitarian response. We need much bigger and stronger UN-led effort to deliver a proper, fully scaled humanitarian response, both to prevent further catastrophe and help those who've suffered. Thirdly, the diplomatic pressure for a ceasefire mustn't abate. It's absolutely critical. There's something called the Quad, which is a Washington-based, US-led group of 4 countries, obviously, as the name implies. It includes United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, plus the United States. They issued a declaration in early September that set out a route map to avoid precisely the situation we've got now, but they've been silent since then. We need them back in action. And fourthly, and finally, this arms flow that's continuing into the competing sides is a recipe for more disaster. So there are very practical demands that come from a humanitarian perspective, because as I always say, every humanitarian emergency is also a political emergency, and that's what we face at the moment.
I have about a minute to go, but I just want to pick up on those points that you talked about, the competing forces, the rival regional and global factions fighting their own battles, and the civilians of Sudan are suffering the most. How does the international community, other than the fact that you want the resurrection of the Quad, deal with this? Because we've got this statement from the UAE this evening distancing themselves, saying we're not actually doing this, but the finger of blame is being pointed at all directions, and at these different groups and countries who are frankly supporting both of these warring sides.
Well, there's certainly money being made, because this is a rich country in its resources. So you're absolutely right to hint at that. But I want to come back to these practical measures. I want every government confronted with, where are you on the call for safe passage of humanitarians and of civilians out? Where are you on the arms flow issue? Where are you on the ceasefire issue? Where are you on the funding of a full-scale humanitarian response? We need backing for those elements, because that's the practical test of whether different countries are spoilers or solution makers in this terrible crisis.
David Miliband, always really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Yalda.
Now to the rest of the day's news, and the former US Vice President Dick Cheney has died at the age of 84. A powerful figure, he played a key role in shaping US foreign policy during some of the most turbulent years of the early 21st century. And while he was credited by supporters for his firm leadership post 9/11, he was criticised by others for his role in the Iraq War and expanded executive powers. Our US correspondent David Blevins examines his legacy and the impact of his career in Washington.
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
He was sworn in as vice president, but was to many the power behind the throne, rising from youngest ever White House chief of staff under Gerald Ford to become George Bush Sr.'s defense secretary and ultimately running mate for George W.
I am proud to have Dick Cheney by my side, and America will be proud to have him as our next vice president.
As defense secretary, he'd overseen Operation Desert Storm, the US-led campaign to oust Iraqi forces from Kuwait.
3 o'clock Thursday morning in the Gulf, the armed forces of the United States began an operation at the direction of the president.
And when al-Qaeda attacked America on 9/11, the new vice president led the response. An architect of the war on terror, leading the charge on claims that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, now known to be false.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use them against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
If his defence of enhanced interrogation methods was controversial, his push for that invasion of Iraq was disastrous.
He'll mostly be remembered for the difficult war on terror, especially the mistake going into Iraq and the execution of that war. But I do think he'll be remembered, at least in the States, in the U.S., for his longer legacy or his longer time in and around government.
He faced scrutiny over claims that Halliburton, the energy giant he once led, had profited from government contracts in Iraq. There were personal setbacks too, an embarrassing quail hunting accident when he shot and wounded his friend Harry Whittington. For a man long accused of overstepping constitutional boundaries himself, he had become an unlikely critic of President Trump, publicly endorsing Kamala Harris.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump.
And questions about the funeral drew this curt response from the White House.
I don't believe the White House is involved in that planning, or at least hasn't gotten to it yet. I know the president is aware of the former vice president's passing, and as you saw, flags have been lowered to half staff in accordance with statutory law.
A paradox of power and controversy. Dick Cheney leaves a complex legacy as the most consequential vice president in modern US history. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme. Still in the US, millions head to the polls for high-stakes elections that could again reshape the political landscape. More on that next.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the world. Millions of voters across America are heading to the polls today for a series of high-stakes elections that could signal the mood of the country ahead of next year's midterms. From the mayor's office in New York City to state governorships in New Jersey and Virginia, this is the first clear test of the electorate almost a year to the day since Donald Trump won office. So what are the races that are taking place? Well, the headline contest is, of course, for the New York mayor. Zoran Mamdani is leading, according to the most recent polls. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is second and running as an independent after losing the Democratic nomination to Mamdani. US talk show host Curtis Sliwa has the Republican nod. In Virginia, Abigail Spanberger and Winsome Earl Sears are vying to become the state's first female governor. And another governor race is taking place in New Jersey. Mikey Sherrill goes up against Jack Ciattarelli, who lost the governor race in 2021 to Phil Murphy by only 3 percentage points. Our US correspondent James Matthews spoke to Zoran Mamdani, the 34-year-old political newcomer poised to lead New York, who said he was nothing like Donald Trump. Have a listen.
You know, Donald Trump ran a presidential campaign with the promise of cheaper groceries. Donald Trump ran a presidential campaign committing to lowering the cost of living. What our success will show is that it is not enough to diagnose the despair in working class Americans' lives. You have to actually deliver on the agenda. And that is what we intend to do each and every day while we are in Hall.
What about the reluctance of members of your own party about your politics?
Look, if you're a member of my own party like Andrew Cuomo, I'd understand why you wouldn't support our politics. Because it's a direct challenge to everything that this former governor has stood for. A politics of impunity, a politics of selling out working class people at the behest of his billionaire donors, and a politics of telling New Yorkers what they can't do when really what they mean to say is what they won't do.
That was Zoran Mamdani speaking to our James Matthews. James joins us now live from New York. And James, I mean, you know, it's difficult not to notice Zoran Mamdani. He's frankly everywhere at the moment. And he's being described by some, and certainly his supporters, as a once-in-a-generation sort of phenomenon. And some people are even comparing him to Donald Trump in terms of, you know, coming in, being an outsider, not necessarily having the support of his party, but all eyes on him today.
Yeah, that's right. That similarity to Donald Trump, I heard that last night, Yalda, some of his supporters saying, look, he's similar in that he campaigns in a similar style, relentlessly hammering this singular populist message, albeit at the opposite end of the political spectrum. And that's what he's done with success here. He's targeted affordability as the key issue. It's what you hear from him day in and day out, and it has struck a chord. in this liberal city, particularly with younger generations, and that's what's put him out in front. I mean, he is very much the unknown who has become the unstoppable. The polls put him way out in front of Cuomo and of Sliwa. African-born, he came to the United States, age 7. He's the son of Indian parents. Controversial and certainly the target of critics because of his past. He has been a critic of Israel, advocated defunding the police, decriminalizing prostitution, and closing New York City jails. So for a number of reasons, Republicans, Trump among them, certainly Speaker Mike Johnson, they actually would quite welcome a Mamdani victory because they would see that as a party shifting to the left, the radical left, as Speaker Mike Johnson would have it. Donald Trump calls Mamdani a communist, so that's all in the mix. But certainly in terms of tonight, results coming in a few hours' time, he's out in front. He is likely to be the next mayor of New York, the first Muslim to hold that office.
Yeah, and James, while, as you say, all eyes on New York and Mamdani, because it feels like the sexiest of all the races, but these other, elections that are taking place equally crucial, and no doubt Republicans watching very closely to see if it is some kind of referendum on Donald Trump almost a year into him coming into office.
Yeah, that's right, Yalda. 9 months of government, and it is a referendum on Trump 2.0 of sorts. A large number of Americans being given the opportunity to have their say in the various contests. You know, they're voting for governor in New Jersey and Virginia. They will be interesting bellwether contests. Interesting to see the vote, for Republicans, particularly amongst demographics that turned to Donald Trump at the last election. Black men, Hispanics. How are Hispanics who backed Donald Trump, got him over the line last year? How do they respond to what they've seen in the past 9 months? A hardened immigration policy, ICE raids, and so on. That will be interesting in terms of tonight, but also looking forward to the midterms next year and, of course, 2028. But, here in New York, it's the sexy contest, as you say, Yalda. Interesting to see how Mamdani does. If he gets more than 50% of the vote, what does the Democratic establishment do then? A party establishment that has tried to marginalize him. If he gets a thumping victory over 50%, it's something they can't ignore. It will represent something of a shift, certainly in the eyes of his supporters, something of a shift in the center of gravity of that party towards the left.
James, always fascinating to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's speak now to Bradley Tusk, a New York-based political consultant who ran Michael Bloomberg's successful re-election campaign for mayor in 2009. Thank you so much, Mr. Tusk, for joining us here on the programme. You understand all too well what goes into one of these campaigns. I mean, this particular campaign of Zohran Mamdani that he's run for New York City mayor has been quite different, though, especially because he's really understood the power of social media.
Yeah, not just social media, but I would say specifically short form video. What Mamdani has done that is really new and different is figured out how to use TikTok, how to use YouTube, how to use Instagram in a way that other candidates haven't. And if you look at least U.S. political history, typically whenever a politician figures out a form of communicating with voters, whether it's Trump and Twitter or Obama and text or JFK and TV, they tend to do really well. So given that, his success makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and no doubt he's charismatic, and we can talk about his policies in a moment, because there is a lot of opposition to his policies. But the fact is that he has been able to take sort of big, obscure ideas and make them almost user-friendly and help the voters understand. When he talks about affordability, suddenly it makes sense to people because, frankly, New York City is one of the most expensive cities on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't necessarily agree with him on every issue, but he has a positive, actual vision for New York City, whether it's free childcare or buses or to deal with the rent or anything else. whether or not he can achieve these things, he at least understands how voters feel, and he's for something. When you look at his opponents like Andrew Cuomo, it's all negative. And when you look at Democrats across the U.S., I can't tell you what the Democrats in Washington want, other than they really don't like Donald Trump. But beyond that, there's no vision whatsoever. So just having an affirmative, positive vision, to me, goes a really long way.
Yeah, and in terms of the Democrats, I mean, as you say, unclear what their message now is, other than the fact that they don't like Donald Trump, and yet they've also failed to rally around Zohran Mamdani.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is Democrats seem to have evolved into a party, and I'm an independent at this point, that just thinks that whining is somehow a good idea. And as a result, it just turns off people across the spectrum. Whereas Mamdani, like him or not, is always smiling. He's personable. He's charming. He's charismatic. That stuff goes a long way. I think that Democrats are worried that because Mamdani is very left-wing and very easily stereotyped into someone who is radical, that he will be used against them in elections all over the country. And I think Chuck Schumer specifically, who has really been the one big New York politician who didn't endorse Mamdani, is looking at a potential primary against AOC in 2028. And his best weapon against her is a failed Mamdani mayoralty, because he can go around the rest of New York and say, if you want New York City to be everywhere, vote for AOC. And so he can't afford politically to endorse Mamdani.
Well, Donald Trump's already doing that. He's attacking, been attacking Mamdani, describing him as a communist, and says that he's going to withhold potentially federal funds because he doesn't want, to give them to Mamdani. Do you think it's going to be an uphill battle if he does win to actually implement the kind of policies that he's talking about?
Yeah, but not because of Trump. Look, Mamdani and Trump are perfect for each other. Their bases are 100% separate. They will fight constantly. Both of their bases will be delighted by it. It's a win-win for them. And in reality, because I've happened to have worked in city government, state government, and federal government, there's not that much real interplay between a mayor and a president, kind of regardless of who and where it is. Where Mamdani really faces a significant challenge is he's walking into office with a $4 to $6 billion budget deficit. And that's separate from the $3 billion he wants to spend on childcare, the $700 million on free buses, or anything else. He's just going to have to figure out how to cut enough to make that happen. He has called for big tax increases, but he doesn't get to decide those. Those are decided by the state government up in Albany, and they've been pretty clear they're not for them.
Bradley Tuss, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, as Russia ups the ante in the Ukraine war, sending thousands of drones, we have a special report showing how Ukraine is fighting back.
I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support.
What country are you
From the UK?
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
Welcome back to the programme. Sky News has been given rare access to the underground squads in Ukraine working to protect against Moscow's aerial threat. Russia fires tens of thousands of Shahed-type drones at Ukraine each year, and while more than half are destroyed, hundreds of civilians are killed. But as our international correspondent John Sparks reports, Kyiv is fighting back with an anti-drone battalion using 3D printed devices to counter the threat.
Yeah, just follow us and be careful.
These men are the hunters, the interceptors, the last line of defense against a notorious Russian weapon called the Shahed. Members of Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade, they run their operation from a former vegetable store. But what they're doing is pushing the boundaries of war.
If we talk about this drone, the first successful destruction of Shahed was like 2 months ago.
2 months ago?
2 months ago.
Their tool of choice is this first-person view drone with C4 explosives packed in the cap.
That's the interceptor called Sting.
It's called Sting, okay.
Yeah, that's a FPV quad.
Okay.
It's very fast. It can go up to 280 kilometers per hour. It can easily destroy Shahed.
The device isn't part of a billion-pound system. It was produced by a 3D printer and wired by hand. But it's designed to do something about this. The menacing whine of a Shahed drone is familiar to everyone in Ukraine, as are the consequences. Earlier this month, they hit a kindergarten in the city of Kharkiv with 3 of these kamikaze-style weapons. Yet our visit to this outpost seemed abnormally calm. The pilot, Pataha, was wiping down his controller, while a navigator stared at his radar screen. You've picked up a Shahed?
Yeah, it's actually 18 kilometers.
18 kilometers from here.
Yeah, it's like too far.
It's funny, isn't it? You can see it moving.
Yeah.
And you have to watch it. You have to watch it.
It's driving me nuts when you see the target, but you cannot do anything about it.
Yet, within a few seconds, the mood shifted. With a Shahed approaching our location, the interceptor was prepared for launch. The radar has given them an indication of where to look, but it's not precise. So they have to use the interceptor's thermal camera. The heat from the Shahed's engine should generate a speck or dot on the horizon. And a navigator called Magic spots it on the screen. The pilot, Pataha, maneuvers the interceptor behind the Russian drone. And as he moves in, he prepares to detonate his device.
Шахед. Есть, отработали.
Вы сдетонировали?
Это был Шахед. Это был Шахед, не Гербера.
The Russians have developed a family of drones based on the Shahed, but these men are developing a way to hunt them. To destroy them, there's a technique, isn't there?
Да, потому что если лететь ему в лоб, как сказать, то за счет того, что скорость Шахеда и... 204-я, отдали радар.
The tension in the storeroom was building.
5-6 кілометрів.
It was clear a major bombardment was now underway. Another interceptor went up to the launch pad.
Все готово?
Да.
And we watched it lift into the sky.
Азимут 36.
Ultimately, the pressure and the responsibility rest on the fingertips of this 21-year-old. The lives of countless Ukrainians depend on him.
Вижу. Снимайте.
Зараз буде баум.
They pursue their target
Плюса, все хорошо.
Сближаюсь нормально.
before Pataha goes in for the kill.
Отработали.
However, the Russians launched more than 400 drones through the night.
Now can be dangerous, so please be ready.
And we could hear the telltale whine. It's going to be a busy night. They can hear one outside. They can hear it. Now they're looking on the radar. Ready to launch.
Да. Все, плюс в воздухе.
Ще раз?
Плюс.
Both sides are competing in a high-tech arms race, with the Russians constantly updating their Shaheds. More speed, better range, even autonomous control. To avoid interception, some can change course in mid-air. The pilot has missed the target and goes round for another try.
Двигайся за ним.
Да.
Вижу.
Да.
Опять потерял.
Нет, все нормально.
Все уже по камере работает.
Приближается в нашу сторону.
The drone was destroyed and the tension released.
Сюда!
What do you think about how you've done so far?
I think we are doing great. Like 3 hit Shaheds in 15 minutes. Like it's like very good. It's amazing, spectacular result.
The commander was also pleased, and he told us there was something special about this pilot.
That guy who is a pilot today, he's well experienced in different video games. So it gave him a good boost in piloting.
In normal life, those type of skills could disqualify you from a job.
Not here.
The unit was running out of interceptors, and we watched as they hurriedly assembled some more. The Russians are now manufacturing some 5,000 Shaheds per month. A lot of Shaheds do get through. I mean, you hear about it in the news every morning. I mean, it's a fact of life in Ukraine.
It's not possible now to teach every crew in this moment for intercepting Shaheds. But in few months, like 3 to 5, it will be possible to destroy most of them.
You think you can do it? You think you can do it?
That's the future. I know. I'm not dreaming about it. I know it will be.
These men are resourceful and driven as they fight on a very different sort of battlefield. But the Russians are sticking to a simple strategy to terrify the people of Ukraine. John Sparks, Sky News.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, blowing the whistle on the Biden administration, we speak to an investigator who claims to have the truth about the death of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
Go ahead, back white jacket.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News. He called you Daddy earlier.
No,
Do you...
He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy. Thank you.
Leicester is on its knees.
They've ripped the soul out of my factory and there's nothing left.
It is eerily quiet.
It's constantly on the brink of capacity.
There's overcrowding. It's not a new thing.
It's rough.
There's nothing to hide. Why aren't international journalists allowed in?
Are you worried about escalation?
Of course I'm worried about escalation, which is why my focus is on de-escalation.
The region, I think, is on edge because they are anticipating a retaliation. Iran retaliates for the US attacks.
Founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all.
Could Putin attack another NATO country within 5 years?
The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparency in journalism. We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot. Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in. Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. You may remember the story of veteran journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, an American-Palestinian who was shot and killed while reporting on an Israeli military raid in the occupied West Bank in 2022. Shireen was an Al Jazeera correspondent who was wearing a press vest when she was struck by a bullet that investigations linked to IDF forces. It sparked outrage. However, the official US statement called the killing a result of tragic circumstances with no reason to believe it was intentional. Well, now an American investigator who worked on the case is disputing the official report. Retired Colonel Steve Gabovics claims the Biden administration diluted the findings to favour Israel's version of events. I asked him about his investigation.
So my responsibility had not initially been to do anything with the investigation. That was not my role as the Chief of Staff for the USSC. However, as a law enforcement professional for almost 27 years at that point in time, I was tasked to put together a team by the U.S. Embassy to go out and look at what had happened to Shireen Abu Akleh based upon the challenges that existed in terms of the reporting, what we'd received out from both the Palestinians and the Israelis. So we went out and looked at all the evidence that was provided to us by the Palestinians, what we saw on the ground, and what we were able to gather from the Israelis, which was limited at the point in time. And the findings to us clearly indicated that the shots were intentionally taken by the sniper in the armored vehicle that was perpendicular to the road and were aimed at headshots to Shireen Abu Akleh. And they would have absolutely been able to see that it was a press representative there. Whether or not they knew that it was Shireen Abu Akleh can always be in question. They knew she was there in the area, but they definitely would have known that it was press because it was clearly visible from that distance of 190 meters through both the naked eye and particularly through a scope.
But that, those findings and that assessment wasn't what initially emerged. Just talk us through that.
That assessment I provided to Ambassador Nides and to Lieutenant General Fenzl and to other people within the State Department during different conferences and briefings over about a month-and-a-half time period. At that point in time, in between, there was some discussion as to what we'd actually say or release. So I continued to push forward and say all the evidence pointed to the fact that it was intentional and not a tragic accident, not a fog of war. There were no other Palestinians there that they were possibly shooting at, so it was definitely aimed and targeted shots. So come July 4th, when the State Department statement came out and stated that it was tragic circumstances and an accidental shooting of Shirin Abu Akleh, I was absolutely flabbergasted. I was very much upset by the fact that that's what the United States formal declaration was, versus continuing to pursue what was clearly evidence on the ground and what the facts identified as being something more that we needed to hold Israel accountable for the actions that had taken the life of an American citizen.
Colonel, do you think that this turned into something beyond the killing of Shirin Abu Akleh, and it was more about the relationship and maintaining the relationship between the United States and Israel, and perhaps there was pressure coming in from somewhere else, and that's why the conclusions that you came to never really saw the light of day?
I do. Internally, I had the discussions with General Fenzl, and he said, I cannot afford to have the government of Israel make me persona non grata. If we say that they were at fault, we need to maintain the relationship with the government of Israel and the IDF, so we can't come forward with this. So there was absolutely a perspective on, we do not want to upset the apple cart. We want to keep Israel as our staunch advocate and our proxy, in essence, for things within the Middle East and with Iran.
Colonel, I'm just going to read a response from General Fenzl, your superior. He put out a statement to the New York Times saying, ultimately, I had to make judgments based on the full set of facts and information available to me. I stand by the integrity of our work and remain confident that we reached the right conclusions. Do you feel that perhaps because of the pressure, perhaps coming from the administration, from Israel, he was in some kind of rock and a hard place trying to maintain all of those relations and therefore, believes that he was dealing with the facts at the time and not wanting to jeopardize all of those relationships?
Well, absolutely. His decision and action upon that was based upon what the U.S. government wanted and what he wanted in terms of what he was doing as the U.S. security coordinator. So he believed personally that it would impact his ability to be the U.S. security coordinator if we held Israel accountable. And then also from the U.S. government also stating that we do not want to, accuse Israel of intentionally killing an American citizen. So clearly there was a difference in not opinion, but a difference of a decision based upon the evidence that was there and what was then subsequently put out as the findings, the official findings from the USSC and the U.S. government.
Were you asked to not talk about it or suppress your findings and your investigation and sort of just move on from what you had found?
To a degree, yes. So we had worked on the report, the formal report for the killing of Shirin Abu Akleh and the events surrounding it for almost 2 years, and was basically told, we're not going to change what we found. We're not going to go back on what the U.S. government put out, regardless of what it is. And at points, I was actually taken off the actual writing of the report, even though I was the foundation of it and had all the expertise on it. I actually was threatened to be relieved if I didn't stop pushing for that and arguing with him on that point.
And Colonel, what do you want to happen now? What would you like to see happen?
Number one, what I want to see is, obviously, first off, as an American, I want to see that the United States will hold people accountable, hold nations accountable when people are killed, and it is clearly evident that it was not an accident or there was something intentional behind it. And we cannot let politics get in the way of that. We cannot let relationships get in the way of that. These are American citizens, and we have to do that. Broader is this fact that we see things globally where people are targeted and killed. We all have things that occur in wartime. We understand the realities of combatants and non-combatants. Countries make mistakes, but we also learn from mistakes. So what I really want to see is that we take action as a nation, and we force our allies as well to take actions as their nations to actually hold the sanctity of human life as extremely important and hold people accountable. Because I think when we do that, what we do is we protect people in perpetuity going forward. When we do not hold people accountable, when we do not hold nations accountable, when we do not take actions to that, it gives them the opportunity to think, okay, well, I have impunity now. I can do what I want because no one's going to take action for it.
That's it from me and the World team. Good night.